Hi everybody, welcome to our creative writing workshop. For this week's lesson, I thought I would share an exercise or lesson with you that has been very popular in the past few years that we've tried it. And it's a really fun one to do because it lends itself to all different kinds of writing. You could do this lesson and write about yourself, or you could make up a really funny story or scary story, or you could even write a poem. So, this week we're going to write about loss. And at first it might sound like a kind of a sad exercise, but when you just take the word loss or to lose and really break it down, you find that there's actually a lot of different ways to write about loss, and there's a lot of different things that can be lost. So, how we start this lesson off at first is to break it down from the word itself. And now, normally, if we were in person, if we were in a class together, I would ask us to make a big list together, and I would write a bunch of stuff on the board that you all would give me ideas. So, since we can't do that, obviously, I went ahead and made a list ahead of time that I'll read you some things and then we can talk about it together. So, for this to work, or if you would like to try the prompt yourself, you'll need to get a sheet of paper so that you can make a list of your own. Now, you don't have to copy this one, this is just an example of how many different things can be lost. So I'll read it to you first and then hold it up so you all can see. Or maybe I can do it this way, yeah. So, what can be lost? Objects. You could make a whole list just of objects you've lost, right? And whether it's made up or whether you've really lost a lot of objects. I know I have. So we've got objects. You can lose games or lose at contests. You can lose time or be lost in time. I have a very cool story to share with you all about that one. You could lose memories. You could lose direction, lose your way, so you could be lost. You could lose pets. Animals can be lost or they can go extinct. People can be lost. And this is another way, too, that you can really make words and ideas more specific, as there's lots of different ways to lose people or animals, right? Like you could lose your mom in the store for a little bit, or you could lose people to more serious things, or and same with animals. You could lose your dog, or maybe they go missing for a while, or sometimes the people we love or the animals we love die and you lose them in that way. And it's a really good way to express that loss is in writing, right? It's a kind of way to keep those animals or those people, those memories alive instead of lost, to write about them. So I encourage you to write about loss, even if it is kind of a sad subject for you. But there's lots of different options. So, and where were we? Ideas, you could lose ideas, lose your memory, lose your train of thought, lose chances. You could lose senses, like when you have a cold and you lose your sense of smell. Body parts, like your teeth, lose your hair. Money, could lose your temper. It's kind of an old expression, but lose your wits. It means you're afraid. And so I've got a few up here. You could lose trust or hope. Or to lose face is an expression that means to like lose your persona or the attitude you're trying to convey for people. You can lose your appetite. That's no fun, right? Or losing your skills, like I don't practice speaking Spanish as much as I should, so sometimes I have to practice or I'll lose those skills. So this is just a very general list of different things that can be lost. So, and I bet there's even more that you could come up with at home. So if you'd like to continue just from this list, you could think of even more things or people or ways that something can be lost or that you could lose something. And so what we would do next if we were in a traditional class after making a list together, I would ask my students to write a list of their own. And so, like I said, when you hear the word loss, it kind of depends on, what your experience is or what you're going through lately, what you might think of first when you hear that word. Maybe your room is really messy and you've lost a lot of things in there, right? So that might be the first thing you think of. Or maybe you did lose someone recently and you'd rather write about that. Or maybe you saw something on the list like time or money that you could write a fun made-up story about. So the next thing to do would be to make a list of the things that you've lost or different kinds of things that can be lost, and to go through your list and pick out what seems the most interesting to you, right? We've talked about that in a few of our lessons, is to trust what you find most interesting, because that'll be what you want to stick to in your writing the most, right? So I wanted to read a few different examples of stories and poems and just little writing examples of how many different ways you can go about writing about loss. And also, it's a good way to practice using all these skills we've been talking about, right? And you'll find that in some of these examples too. People who are really using their five senses, and personification comes up a little bit. And a good thing too is to remember to always show more than you tell. So we talked about putting images into writing, right? Like, how much can we see what's going on? So the first example is something made up, and you'll be able to tell why. And this is by a second grader. I lost an eyeball. I liked it when the doctor put one eye behind my head and one in front. But why behind? He put a new one in front, but I didn't ask for one in the back. It's great because if someone tries to get me, I can see the person and get away. So that was by a second grader who imagined what it would be like to lose one eye and have it put in the back of his head. So the next one that I had told you all about is by a fourth grader, and it's called When I Was Lost in Time. It all happened one crazy day in 1955 when Peter went on his vacation to Pennsylvania in a plane. When the plane was half over Pennsylvania, it started to crash. The plane crashing in a shopping center. The plane was on fire. Before Peter could get out, the plane blew up. The crazy thing was when the plane blew up, it sent Peter back in time to the year 1892, sorry. He landed in the middle of the street. He quickly jumped out of the road. He walked into a scientist's shop. He walked over to a blanket, which something was hidden under. He pulled the blanket off. It was a sports car. This sports car had rocket boosters and wires coming out of the trunk. And this one's actually unfinished. This is all coming from a book. It's a book of examples. And so the note here says, this piece went on for 3 more paragraphs to a satisfying ending in Peter's garage in 1955. So unfortunately, we don't get to hear the end of that story. But I thought that could be something really fun for you all to try if you're interested in writing fiction. What would you do if you were lost in time? How would you get lost in time? For this story, it kind of started with a plane crash, or so maybe something crazy happens and that lands you in a different year or different time period. So that could be something fun to imagine. This one's by another 4th grader, this next one, and it's true. It sounds like it's nonfiction. It says, I like to get lost in stores and the woods. Sometimes I get scared because it is quiet, but if you get used to it, you don't get scared. When my mom goes shopping with me, I always hide and scare my mom. My brother likes to do that too. It is fun if you get lost. So that student wanted to just write about being lost. Though, as someone who's older, I would not recommend scaring your parents by being lost, because that's very scary for them to think about their point of view, right? Losing their kids in the grocery store must be very scary. Okay, so this next one is another fiction, an example of something that might sound kind of sad, but they actually made it funny. So this one's called I Lost My Mind. One day I lost my mind. I looked all over for it, in my shoes and socks, and in the closet. It was not there. I started to go crazy when suddenly my 3-year-old brother came in and hit me on the head with a book. This made my mind jiggle inside my head, and I sure felt it. Then I knew it was still there. I never really lost it. That was by a 6th grader, and I thought it was just so creative. And you could really kind of feel it, right? Her mind just jiggling around in her head. Okay, so I have a few more examples to read to you all that come from some of my past students. Well, actually, they weren't my students. They were my peer students. This next one is called Chicken Nugget. And this was one of our favorite stories. It came from something silly that this student didn't think it was worth writing about, but he ended up just writing this really funny little story poem. So you never know what you could come up with or what something that might seem silly is actually really great writing material. Chicken Nugget. This one time, I lost a chicken nugget. I left my last one in the fridge for later. But my dog stood up, opened the fridge, and took it. The worst part is, I saw her do it. When she closed the fridge, she turned around, and I said, "Put it down." She froze like a burglar caught in the act. I stared into her brown, intelligent eyes and at her goldish brown coat. She knew what she was doing. But being quick as a cat, she ate it. I fell onto my knees, looking to the gods. Without knowing, tears spilled down my face like a never-ending waterfall. I felt as if I had been struck. I fell onto my hands too, as my dog stood proudly before me. It was as if I had lost my light in life. I had no reason to live anymore. Then my mom got me more chicken nuggets. So, with my new 6-piece nugget box, I sat down and shared it with my dog, Zoe. Isn't that so funny? I can't even read it without laughing. And a happy ending too, right? They both sit down and have some chicken nuggets together. And something I noticed, there's more than one use of loss in here, right? He says, it was as if I had lost my light in life. So there's a few dramatic things going on in there, but it's told in a funny way, so it's kind of that dramatic humor. So these next two are a little bit more serious, and they're both really beautiful and great examples of ways you can really put emotions on paper and keep things alive after they're gone or lost. So this one is called My Best Friend. It's been 6 months since I lost you, aka the longest I haven't seen you. You were my best friend and you didn't have a clue, but I knew we would get along from the start. So when I lost you, I lost a piece of my heart. I just wanted to let you know that I love you, cowboy, and you were a major part of my joy. When I was hurt, you gave me a look saying, "You can get through this with hard work." You gave me motivation by saying, "You can get through this, you just have to try." Isn't that really amazing? And she talks about losing a piece of her heart when she loses her friend. Another really powerful way that loss is being talked about in this writing. And these the ones that we publish in these journal too, you can really hear how detailed they are. So this is something else I've been saying every week, is that, you know, when you first start out, you might just have the idea, or you might just have the memory. And then the more you write on it, the more really good specific details you can add, the more practice you give it. So even if something seems like incomplete, it doesn't mean it's over. You can always go back and revise and keep practicing. Okay, and this last one I'll share with y'all is another poem, and it's called What I Lost. I lost my granddad to his age. That is what turned his page. I remember when I had to get his food and medicine when he grew old. I remember when he fell off his crutches and thought he broke something, then needed help getting around. I remember when he gave me $20 to eat when I went on a field trip so I could have fun and eat good. When he passed away, I was at home washing dishes. My cousin called me, told me that he had passed away. He lived up the road and I ran fast, so fast that my neighbors' houses were a blur. I love that one too. And sometimes it can maybe sound intimidating to write about something so big, like losing somebody. But like in this past poem, we get so many emotions just from those few memories he shares, and the memory of hearing that news and running so fast. You really get a lot of feeling and emotion just from those few stanzas, right? So that's all I have to share with you today. Oh, actually, just kidding. I started making another list too, because if you find that maybe you're not having so much luck with loss, you know, there's a lot of other more general themes or words that can be used in more than one way. So that made me think about how I really love collecting things. I love beach combing and looking for seashells. I used to love finding bugs and rocks as a kid. So I thought you could maybe do the opposite of this lesson if you'd like, and write about what can be found. So this list was a little bit shorter. And some things you'll notice were the same that are on the lost list, which I thought was kind of nice and hopeful, right? So I put seashells and rocks, but here we have again animals, pets, money. That's something fun to write about. What would you do if you found $1 million or something? Confidence, finding confidence, or skills, talents, interests. That's something, maybe the happier side of loss, right? Something once lost, like, I know it's the best feeling ever when you lose like a necklace or something in your messy bedroom, and then you find it years later. You thought it was lost and you're just like, oh my goodness. So if you've lost something, don't give up hope. You might find it again. All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed tuning in to these really great poems and stories today. And I hope and encourage you all to make a list of your own and to write about loss or maybe something you found, whether it's something sad or happy or both. I hope you all are out there writing and that you've enjoyed listening in either way. So we have one more creative writing workshop next week. So I'll see you guys then. It's been really fun and I hope you've all enjoyed it too. Bye everybody.